The gas station fluorescent lights flickered against the midnight darkness as Sienna Clark stared at 8 crumpled dollar bills in her palm, every cent she had left in the world. Her daughter needed breakfast. The rent was 2 weeks overdue, and the massive biker now collapsing beside his motorcycle, his face turning the color of ash, was about to force her to make an impossible choice. In 30 seconds, she would spend her last money on a dying stranger. In 36 hours, hundreds of roaring motorcycles would surround her home while her neighbors screamed for her arrest. But right now, in this moment, all she could hear was the terrible gasping sound of a man drowning in his own body. If you're watching from your city, drop a comment below and hit that like button. Let me see how far Sienna's story travels. Now let me take you back to where it all began. P. The night pressed down on East Oakland like a held breath. Sienna Clark's ancient Honda Civic coughed twice before the engine finally caught, belching blue smoke into the parking lot of Wong's Market where she'd just finished her second shift. Her back ached from 8 hours of stocking shelves, her feet throbbed from the 6 hours before that cleaning office buildings downtown, and her phone, cracked across the screen like a spider's web, showed 11:47 p.m. in harsh white numbers. 13 minutes to get home. 13 minutes before Mrs. Chen next door would start charging her extra for watching Maya past midnight. Sienna pulled out of the lot, her headlights cutting through the darkness of San Pablo Avenue. The streets were mostly empty this time of night, just a few stragglers outside the corner store, a cluster of teenagers on bikes, and the occasional bus grinding its way toward the last stops of the evening. Her gas gauge sat just above empty. Another problem for tomorrow. Everything was a problem for tomorrow. Her phone buzzed against the passenger seat. She knew without looking it was another text from the landlord. Marcus had been patient for exactly 1 month after she'd lost her morning job at the call center. His patience had a dollar amount attached to it, and she'd exceeded that amount 2 weeks ago. The phone buzzed again. "Not now," Sienna whispered to the empty car. "Please, not now." She'd worked 14 hours today. 14 hours that would show up on her paycheck in 2 weeks. Too late for rent, probably too late to keep the lights on. The $8 in her pocket was supposed to buy Maya breakfast, and maybe, if she was lucky, a gallon of milk. Everything else would have to wait. The traffic light ahead turned red and Sienna eased her car to a stop, letting her head fall back against the headrest. Through her windshield, she could see the stars, or what passed for stars in Oakland, just a few persistent pinpricks fighting through the orange glow of streetlights and smog. Maya loved stars. Last week, she'd asked Sienna if they could drive somewhere to see more of them. "Maybe this summer, baby," Sienna had said, knowing summer was just another word for someday, and someday was a place they could never afford to visit. The light turned green. Sienna pressed the gas pedal, and her car lurched forward with a grinding sound that definitely hadn't been there yesterday. She added it to the mental list she kept of things slowly falling apart. Car transmission, refrigerator seal, Maya's shoes, the lock on the bathroom door, the caulking around the tub, her own winter coat, their lives. The BP station appeared on her right, its lights blazing like a small sun in the darkness. Sienna's fuel light had been on since this morning. She'd been gambling all day that she'd have enough to get home, enough to get to work tomorrow. The gamble was about to pay off. She was less than 2 miles from their apartment. Then she saw the motorcycles. There were 3 of them parked under the station's awning, massive chrome machines that gleamed even in the harsh fluorescent glare. Sienna's first instinct was to keep driving. Nothing good happened around bikes like that. Not in this neighborhood. Not at this hour. But her fuel gauge sat stubbornly on E, and she'd need to get to work in exactly 6 hours. She pulled in, choosing the pump farthest from the motorcycles. The night air hit her face when she opened the door, warmer than she'd expected, carrying the smell of gasoline and hot asphalt. Sienna pulled out her $8, 4 ones, 3 crumpled singles, and one that looked like it had been through a washing machine. She pressed them flat against her palm, trying to will them into being more than they were. $8. Maybe 2 gallons. Enough to get to work. Not enough to get back. She walked toward the station's convenience store. Her keys clutched in her hand the way her mother had taught her. One key protruding between her knuckles, ready to defend herself. The bikers stood near their motorcycles. 3 massive men in leather vests covered with patches she couldn't read from this distance. They were laughing about something, passing a cigarette between them. Sienna kept her head down and pushed through the glass door. Inside, the store was nearly empty except for the attendant, a South Asian man in his 50s who looked as tired as she felt, and a woman in scrubs browsing the energy drink section. Sienna headed for the counter. $8 on pump 6, she said, sliding the bills across the counter. The attendant took her money without looking up, his fingers moving across the register with practiced efficiency. Pump's on. Thank you. Sienna turned to leave, then stopped. Through the store window, she could see one of the bikers, the biggest one, with a gray beard that reached his chest, walking toward his motorcycle. He moved slowly, one hand pressed against the bike's seat like he needed it to steady himself. Then he stopped walking. His other hand went to his chest. His face, even from this distance, even through the smudged glass, changed. The color drained from it like water running out of a sink. "Ma'am?" the attendant said. "You okay?" But Sienna wasn't listening. She was watching the big biker stumble, watching his knees buckle, watching him grab for his motorcycle and miss. He hit the ground hard, his body folding in on itself, and Sienna heard the sound of his head cracking against the pavement, even through the glass. "Oh, God," the woman in scrubs whispered. She'd seen it too. The other two bikers were suddenly moving, shouting, dropping to their knees beside their friend. One of them, younger, maybe 30, with dark hair pulled back in a ponytail, was yelling something Sienna couldn't hear. "Not my problem," the attendant said quietly, more to himself than to anyone else. "Not my problem." But Sienna was already moving toward the door. "Lady, don't," the attendant called after her. "Don't get involved." The night air hit her face again, but this time Sienna barely noticed. She was running across the parking lot, her tired legs finding energy she didn't know she had. The two bikers looked up as she approached, and she saw fear in their eyes, real, raw fear that mirrored what she felt every time Maya ran a fever she couldn't afford to treat. "What happened?" Sienna dropped to her knees beside them, her hands already reaching for the fallen man's neck to check his pulse the way she'd learned in a CPR class she'd taken 7 years ago. "He just went down," the younger biker said. His voice shook. "Hawk. Hawk. Can you hear me?" The big biker, Hawk, was conscious, but barely. His eyes were open but unfocused, his breathing coming in short, desperate gasps. His lips had started to turn blue. One massive hand still clutched his chest, fingers digging into the leather vest like he was trying to reach inside himself and fix whatever was breaking. "Heart attack," Sienna said. The words came out calm, steady, even though her own heart was hammering against her ribs. "Call 911, now." "No signal." The younger biker held up his phone, his hand shaking so badly Sienna could see the screen wavering in the light. "It's not going through." "Give it to me." Sienna grabbed the phone and dialed. Nothing. The call wouldn't connect. She tried again. Still nothing. The BP station sat in a dead zone, a gap in the network that nobody cared about because nobody important ever needed service here. "The store," Sienna said. "They'll have a landline." But she'd already seen the attendant's face through the window. He wasn't going to help. He'd locked the door. She could see him standing behind it, his hand on the deadbolt, his expression carefully blank. The woman in scrubs had moved to the back of the store, as far from the window as she could get. Hawk made a sound, a low groan that came from somewhere deep in his chest. His eyes found Sienna's face, and she saw awareness there, saw him understanding what was happening to him. "Aspirin," Sienna said. "Does anyone have aspirin?" The biker stared at her. "He needs to chew aspirin, now. It might help until the ambulance gets here." "We don't have—" The younger biker stopped, his eyes going to the convenience store. "They'll have some inside." They locked the door. "I'll break it down." "No." Sienna stood up, her legs protesting the sudden movement. "Stay with him. Keep him conscious. Talk to him. I'll be right back." She ran to the store entrance and pounded on the glass. "Open the door! I need to buy aspirin!" The attendant shook his head, his hand still on the deadbolt. "Please!" Sienna slammed her palm against the glass hard enough to make it rattle. "A man is dying!" The attendant pointed to a sign. Management reserves the right to refuse service. I have money! Sienna pulled out the $8 she'd just handed him, holding them up to the glass. Please. For a long moment, the attendant just stared at her. Then slowly, he reached for the deadbolt. The lock clicked. The door opened 6 inches. Aspirin, Sienna said. Where's the aspirin? Aisle 3. But you need to... Sienna was already inside, running past the coffee station and the rotating hot dogs that had been there since morning. She found the pain reliever section and grabbed the first bottle of aspirin she saw, $7.99. A bottle of water from the cooler, $1.29. She brought them to the counter and slapped her $8 down. The attendant looked at the money. That's not enough. Tax is... It's $8. Sienna's voice came out harder than she'd intended. That man outside is dying. I don't care about 30 cents. The attendant hesitated. Then he rang up the sale, made change that Sienna didn't wait for, and watched as she ran back out into the night. Hawk's breathing had gotten worse. His chest rose and fell in irregular spasms, and the blue color had spread from his lips to his fingernails. The younger biker had positioned himself at Hawk's head, talking to him in a steady stream of words Sienna couldn't quite hear. I got it. Sienna dropped to her knees again, fighting to open the aspirin bottle with shaking hands. The safety cap fought her, refused to turn, mocked her desperate fumbling. Finally, it popped open, spilling tablets across the pavement. She grabbed 3 of them and crushed them between her fingers, then held them to Hawk's lips. Chew these. Don't swallow them whole. Chew them. Hawk's eyes found her face again. For a second, she thought he wouldn't do it, thought he'd refuse help from a stranger half his size. Then his lips parted, and she pushed the crushed aspirin into his mouth. Water. She twisted open the bottle and tilted it carefully, letting small sips wash down the medication. That's it. Keep breathing. The ambulance is coming. Is it? The younger biker asked quietly. Because my phone still isn't... Give it to me again. Sienna took the phone and dialed 911 with fingers that had steadied somehow. This time, the call connected. The line rang once, twice, 3 times. 911. What's your emergency? Heart attack. BP gas station on San Pablo Avenue near 73rd. We need an ambulance now. Is the patient conscious? Barely. He's breathing, but his lips are blue. I gave him aspirin. How much aspirin? 3 tablets. I crushed them. Good. That's good. Keep him calm. Keep him still. Don't let him stand up. The ambulance is 7 minutes out. 7 minutes? Sienna looked at Hawk's face, at the sweat running down his temples, at the way his massive frame seemed to be collapsing in on itself. 7 minutes might as well be 7 hours. He doesn't have 7 minutes, Sienna said into the phone. Ma'am, that's the closest unit. Just keep him calm and send everyone. Send whoever's available. This is a heart attack, not a false alarm. I understand, ma'am. Help is on the way. Stay on the line with me. Sienna stayed on the line. She knelt there in the gas station parking lot, holding a stranger's hand while he fought to breathe, talking to him the way she talked to Maya when her daughter woke up from nightmares. You're going to be okay. Help is coming. What's your name? Hawk. That's a good name. Strong name. You stay with us, Hawk. You don't get to leave yet. You hear me? You don't get to leave. The younger biker, the one who'd been talking to Hawk before, looked at Sienna like she'd appeared out of thin air. Why are you doing this? Because nobody else was. In the distance, Sienna heard the first wail of sirens. They grew louder, closer, until the night was full of flashing lights and the diesel rumble of emergency vehicles. 2 ambulances pulled into the lot, followed by a fire truck that barely fit between the pumps. Paramedics swarmed around Hawk, their hands moving with practiced efficiency as they checked vitals, started an IV, loaded him onto a stretcher. Sienna stepped back, her role finished, and watched as they lifted him into the ambulance. You saved his life, the younger biker said. He stood beside her, his eyes following the ambulance as it pulled away with lights blazing. You saved Hawk's life. The paramedics saved his life. Sienna stopped. She didn't know how to finish that sentence. What had she done? Spent her last $8 on aspirin and water, refused to walk away. Made a choice that wouldn't pay rent or buy breakfast, but felt like the only choice she could make. I'm Cole. The younger biker held out his hand. Cole Martinez, that's Hawk, Thomas Hawkins. He's family. Sienna shook his hand. His grip was strong, his palm calloused from years of gripping motorcycle handlebars. Sienna Clark. Sienna, Cole said her name like he was committing it to memory. You didn't have to help him. Most people would have kept driving. I know. So why didn't you? Sienna thought about Maya, about the nights she'd lain awake wondering if her daughter would grow up in a world where people helped each other or just looked the other way. She thought about her mother, gone 7 years now, who'd always said that the measure of a person wasn't what they did when everyone was watching, it was what they did when nobody would ever know. Because he needed help, Sienna said simply. That's enough. Cole reached into his vest and pulled out a wallet. Let me pay you back for the aspirin and for… No. The word came out sharper than Sienna intended. I didn't help him for money. I know, but no. Sienna took a step back. I hope he's okay. I really do, but I need to get home. She walked back to her car before Cole could argue. The fuel pump still waited at pump 6, the numbers frozen at $8. Sienna pumped her 2 gallons of gas, the gas she'd paid for before the world had stopped and restarted, and got back in her Honda. Her phone showed 12:47 a.m. She was 47 minutes late. Mrs. Chen would charge her an extra $10, money she didn't have, added to a debt she couldn't pay. Sienna pulled out of the gas station and didn't look back. In her rearview mirror, she caught a glimpse of Cole standing in the fluorescent light, watching her drive away. And the third biker, an older man with military bearing, walking back from wherever he'd gone during the chaos. She drove home through empty streets, her hands steady on the wheel, her mind replaying the moment when Hawk's eyes had found hers and she'd seen death looking back. She'd stood between a dying man and the end, and for just a few minutes, she'd been enough. It would have to be enough. Because tomorrow she'd wake up with $0 in her pocket, bills she couldn't pay, a daughter who needed breakfast, and a car that might not start again. The aspirin and water had cost her everything. But as Sienna pulled into the cracked parking lot of her apartment building and saw Mrs. Chen's light still on, still waiting, she found she couldn't regret it. Some choices cost more than money. Some choices were worth everything you had. Maya was already asleep when Sienna finally made it upstairs. Mrs. Chen had accepted Sienna's promise of payment next week with the same tired patience she'd shown for the past 6 months, ever since Sienna's mother had passed and left her alone with a 4-year-old and more debt than hope. Sienna locked the apartment door, 3 locks, top to bottom, the ritual of safety in a neighborhood that wasn't, and walked quietly to Maya's room. Her daughter slept curled around a stuffed elephant that had been Sienna's when she was small, her breathing soft and even, her face peaceful in the dim glow of a nightlight shaped like a crescent moon. I'm sorry, baby, Sienna whispered, though Maya couldn't hear. I'm sorry breakfast is going to be crackers tomorrow. I'm sorry I can't give you everything you deserve. She pulled Maya's blanket up higher, kissed her forehead, and walked back to the living room that doubled as her own bedroom. The futon sagged in the middle, the springs long since given up any pretense of support. Sienna sat down and finally let herself feel it. The exhaustion, the fear, the weight of choices that never seemed to get easier. Her phone buzzed. Another text from Marcus, the landlord. Final notice. Sienna deleted it without reading the rest. She'd deal with it tomorrow. Or the day after. Or the day after that, when dealing with it meant choosing between rent and food, between lights and Maya's medicine, between staying and having nowhere to go. She lay down on the futon and stared at the ceiling, at the water stain that looked like a spreading hand, at the crack that grew a little longer every month. Somewhere in Oakland, Hawk was in a hospital bed, maybe dying, maybe living. Somewhere in Oakland, Cole was probably calling other bikers, spreading the word about what had happened. And here in this apartment, Sienna was exactly where she'd been this morning, broke, exhausted, and running out of options. But she'd chosen to help. That had to count for something. Sleep took her quickly, pulled her down into dreams where $8 could buy more than aspirin, where gas tanks never emptied, where daughters never asked for things their mothers couldn't give them. She didn't hear the motorcycles that drove past her building twice that night, slowing down each time they passed. She didn't see Cole sitting on his bike across the street, memorizing which window was hers, making note of the address, the building number, the apartment that had lights burning at 1 a.m. because someone inside couldn't afford to sleep. She didn't know that in a hospital 5 miles away, Hawk had opened his eyes and asked for the name of the woman who'd saved him. She didn't know that when Cole told him, Hawk had said 2 words. Find her. Sienna knew none of this. She only knew that when she woke up at 5:30 a.m., her alarm shrieking into the gray dawn, she had exactly $0, half a tank of gas that wouldn't get her through the day, and a daughter who would wake up hungry in an hour. The morning came anyway. It always did. Maya woke up asking for pancakes. "We don't have pancakes today, baby," Sienna said, forcing brightness into her voice that she didn't feel. "But we have crackers, the good ones, with the little cheese packets." Maya's face fell in that particular way 4-year-olds had perfected, disappointment so pure it could break your heart from across a room. "You said pancakes on Saturday." "I know, sweetie, I know I did." Sienna knelt down beside Maya's bed, brushing sleep-tangled hair from her daughter's forehead. "But sometimes plans change. We'll have pancakes next Saturday, I promise." "You promised last time, too." The words landed like a physical blow. Maya didn't say them with accusation, just with the simple honesty of a child who was learning that her mother's promises had expiration dates. "I'm sorry." Sienna pulled Maya into a hug, breathing in the sleep-warm smell of her daughter's hair. "I'm doing my best." "I know, Mama." Maya's small arms wrapped around Sienna's neck. "Can I have the crackers with the elephant on the box?" "Yes, absolutely yes." Sienna made breakfast, 6 crackers arranged on Maya's favorite plate, the one with the faded cartoon characters that had survived 3 moves and countless dishwasher cycles. A banana sliced thin to make it look like more. A cup of water because the milk had run out yesterday. "Is this all we have?" Maya asked, her voice small. "For now. But I get paid next week, and then we'll go to the store and fill up the cart. You can pick out anything you want." "Anything?" "Within reason." Sienna sat down across from Maya at their tiny kitchen table, the one that wobbled no matter how many folded napkins she wedged under the short leg. "What would you pick?" Maya's face lit up. "The cereal with the marshmallows, and those cookies that look like bears, and the juice boxes with the princesses on them." "That sounds perfect." They ate breakfast in the quiet morning light, filtering through blinds that didn't quite close all the way. Sienna had 3 crackers and half the banana, leaving the rest for Maya's lunch. Her stomach growled in protest, but she'd gotten good at ignoring it. "Mama, why do you look so tired?" "I'm not tired. I'm just thinking." "About what?" "About how we're going to survive another week. About how I'm going to explain to Marcus why the rent is late again. About whether your shoes will last another month because I can't afford new ones. About a man dying in a gas station parking lot and the $8 that might have been the difference between keeping the lights on or sitting in darkness. About how lucky I am to have you," Sienna said instead, reaching across the table to squeeze Maya's hand. Maya squeezed back, her fingers sticky with cracker crumbs. "I'm lucky too. Mrs. Chen says I have the best mama in the whole building." "Mrs. Chen is very kind. She gave me a cookie yesterday, a big one with chocolate chips. She said it was a secret." Sienna's throat tightened. Mrs. Chen, who charged late fees because she had to, who had her own bills and her own struggles, giving Maya cookies in secret, kindness in a world that rarely rewarded it. "That was nice of her," Sienna managed. "Did you say thank you?" "Yes, I said thank you 3 times. Maya finished her last cracker and looked at her empty plate with the resignation of someone already learning to expect less. "Can I watch cartoons before school?" "Just 1 episode. We have to leave in 40 minutes. Maya scrambled down from her chair and ran to the living room, where their ancient television took 3 tries to turn on and displayed everything with a faint green tint that Sienna had learned to ignore. The sound of cartoon voices filled the apartment, bright, cheerful sounds that belonged to a world where problems solved themselves in 22 minutes, and nobody ever went hungry. Sienna cleared the table and washed the 2 plates, the 2 forks, the 2 cups. Everything they owned came in 2s now, just enough for a mother and daughter, Nothing extra, nothing wasted. She dried them and put them back in the cabinet that didn't quite close because the hinge had broken 6 months ago. Her phone buzzed on the counter. Sienna looked at it the way you'd look at a snake that might or might not be poisonous. The screen showed 3 new texts, all from numbers she recognized. Marcus, the electric company, and her manager at Wong's Market, asking if she could cover another shift tonight. Another shift meant another 8 hours on her feet. It also meant another day of pay, another small buffer against the rising tide of bills. It meant asking Mrs. Chen to watch Maya even later, going deeper into debt to a neighbor who couldn't afford to be generous, but was anyway. Sienna texted back, "Yes, what time?" The response came immediately. 4 midnight. Thanks. 8 more hours. On top of the 6 she'd already committed to cleaning offices. 14 hours total. She'd get home at 12:30 a.m. if she was lucky, sleep for 5 hours, and do it all again. "Mama," Maya called from the living room, "come see. The princess found her lost puppy." Sienna walked to the doorway and watched her daughter sitting cross-legged on the floor, her face tilted up toward the green-tinted screen, completely absorbed in a world where lost things got found and stories always ended happy. She wanted to give Maya that world. She wanted it so badly, her chest ached with the wanting. "That's wonderful, baby," Sienna said. "I'm glad the puppy came home." She went back to the kitchen and made Maya's lunch, the remaining crackers, the other half of the banana, and a juice box she'd been saving for emergencies. This qualified. Everything qualified lately. At 7:15, they left the apartment. Maya wore her school clothes, jeans with patches on both knees and a shirt that was getting too small but would have to last until Sienna could find something at the thrift store. Sienna wore her cleaning uniform under a jacket that hid the worst of the stains. The Honda started on the second try, which felt like a small victory. They drove to Maya's pre-K program in silence, Maya humming along to a song only she could hear, Sienna calculating fuel in her head. She had maybe a gallon left. Enough to get to work, not enough to get home. "Have a good day, sweet pea." Sienna kissed Maya's forehead as they stood outside the pre-K entrance. "Learn something amazing." "I will. Love you, Mama." "Love you more." Sienna watched Maya run inside. Her backpack, decorated with iron-on patches Sienna had applied to cover the holes, bouncing against her small shoulders. The teacher, Miss Rodriguez, waved from the doorway. Sienna waved back, grateful that the pre-K program was free, grateful that someone else could feed Maya lunch today, grateful for small mercies that felt enormous when you had nothing else. She drove to the office building downtown where she spent her mornings pushing a vacuum cleaner through carpeted hallways and scrubbing toilets used by people who made more in a week than she made in 6 months. The parking garage smelled like exhaust and old concrete. Sienna found a spot on the 4th level and walked down because the elevator cost quarters she didn't have. The morning passed in a blur of motion and chemical cleaner fumes. Sienna emptied trash cans, wiped down desks, cleaned windows that looked out over the Oakland skyline. Through those windows, she could see the bay glittering in the morning sun, the bridge stretching across it like something out of a postcard. People paid millions for views like this. Sienna got to see it while scrubbing other people's coffee stains off break room counters. Her supervisor, Janet, found her around noon. "Sienna, you got a minute?" Sienna's heart dropped. Nothing good ever started with, "You got a minute," from a supervisor. "Sure," Sienna said, setting down her spray bottle. Janet was 50-something, with tired eyes and sensible shoes. She'd been cleaning offices for 30 years and wore the weight of it in her shoulders. "I need to cut hours next week. Building management is tightening the budget." "How many hours?" "You're going from 6 shifts to 4, I'm sorry. I fought for you, but they're cutting everyone." 4 shifts instead of 6, 12 hours a week instead of 18. Sienna did the math instantly. That was nearly $200 less per month. $200 that might as well be $2,000 for all the difference it made. "When does it start?" Sienna asked, keeping her voice level. "Monday." 3 days. She had 3 days before her already impossible situation became genuinely catastrophic. "Okay," Sienna said. "Thank you for telling me. I really am sorry. If something opens up, I know." "Thanks, Janet." Sienna went back to cleaning, her hands moving on autopilot while her mind raced through options she didn't have. Pick up more hours at Wong's Market, except they'd already told her they couldn't give her more than part-time. Find a third job, except she was already working 14-hour days and barely seeing her daughter. Move to a cheaper apartment, except she'd already moved 3 times in 2 years, and there was nowhere cheaper that wasn't outright dangerous. She finished her shift at 2 p.m. and sat in her car in the parking garage, staring at the fuel gauge that now showed less than a quarter tank. She didn't have money for gas. She didn't have money for anything. Her phone buzzed. Another text from Marcus. Rent due or eviction. Notice. Monday. Sienna deleted it. Then she put her head down on the steering wheel and allowed herself exactly 60 seconds to fall apart. She counted them off in her head, 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi, 3 Mississippi, and let the tears come fast and silent, the kind of crying you learned to do when you couldn't afford for anyone to see. At 60 seconds, she stopped. She wiped her face with the hem of her shirt, checked her reflection in the rearview mirror to make sure her eyes weren't too red, and started the car. The engine coughed twice before catching. The fuel light came on immediately. Sienna drove to Wong's Market on fumes and prayer, pulled into the employee lot, and sat for another minute, gathering the strength to go inside and stock shelves for 8 hours. Her back still hurt from yesterday. Her feet had blisters on the blisters. None of it mattered. She needed this shift. She needed every hour she could get. She was halfway across the parking lot when she heard it. The sound came from everywhere and nowhere, a deep, rumbling thunder that made the ground vibrate and set off car alarms 3 rows over. Sienna stopped walking and turned around, trying to identify the source. Then she saw them. Motorcycles. Dozens of them. Maybe hundreds. They poured into the parking lot like a flood of chrome and leather and noise, their engines roaring in harmony, their riders wearing vests identical to the one Hawk had worn last night. Sienna's first instinct was to run. Her second was to hide. Her third, the one she actually followed, was to stand perfectly still and hope they hadn't come for her. But they had. The motorcycles formed a semicircle around her car, their riders killing their engines one by one until the parking lot fell into relative quiet. Sienna counted at least 50 bikes, maybe more, with riders ranging from men in their 20s to women with gray hair and faces that had seen decades. Cole stepped off his motorcycle and walked toward her. He looked different in daylight, younger than she'd thought, with dark eyes that held something Sienna couldn't quite read. "Sienna Clark," Cole said. Not a question, a statement. "How did you find me?" Her voice came out steadier than she felt. "It's a small city when you know the right people. We need to talk. I'm about to start my shift. This is more important." Cole gestured to the other riders. "Hawk wants to thank you." "I don't need thanks. I need to go to work." "He's in the hospital. He wants to see you." "I can't. I have to." Sienna stopped. Every biker was looking at her now, 50 pairs of eyes fixed on her face. "I can't just leave work." "Yes, you can." A woman's voice coming from one of the motorcycles. She was maybe 60, with silver hair pulled back in a braid and a leather vest that bore the same patches as the others. She swung off her bike and walked towards Sienna with the confidence of someone who'd spent her life not taking no for an answer. "I'm Margaret. I've known Hawk for 35 years. He's in a hospital bed right now because of a heart attack that should have killed him. The only reason he's alive is because a woman he'd never met spent her last $8 on aspirin and water. You think your shift at a grocery store is more important than that? You don't understand. I understand perfectly. You're broke. You're scared. You've got a kid to feed and bills to pay and a life that's held together with duct tape and determination." Margaret's voice softened. "I've been where you are. A lot of us have. But right now, a good man wants to say thank you. Let him." Sienna looked at the motorcycles, at the riders, at Cole standing there with an expression that said he wasn't going to take no for an answer either. She thought about walking into Wong's Market and spending 8 hours stocking shelves while Hawk lay in a hospital bed, wanting to thank her for something any decent person would have done. "I need to tell my manager," Sienna said finally. "Already done." Cole held up his phone. "Called and explained the situation. They said take your time." "You can't just—" "We can. We did. Come on." Cole led her to a motorcycle parked at the edge of the semicircle. It was massive and gleaming, with saddlebags and a seat that looked more comfortable than Sienna's futon. He handed her a helmet. "I've never been on a motorcycle," Sienna said. "First time for everything. Just hold on and lean when I lean. You'll be fine." Sienna put on the helmet. It smelled like leather and something else, oil maybe, or road dust. She climbed onto the back of the motorcycle, her hands finding holds on Cole's vest because she didn't know where else to put them. "Ready?" Cole asked. "No." "Good enough." The engine roared to life beneath her. Sienna felt it in her bones, a vibration that traveled through the seat and up her spine. Then they were moving, pulling out of the parking lot with 50 other motorcycles following in formation, and Sienna held on because falling off wasn't an option. They rode through Oakland like a parade, traffic parting for them, pedestrians stopping to stare. Sienna had never felt so visible in her life. She was used to being invisible. The cleaning lady nobody looked at, the customer service voice nobody remembered, the single mother rushing through grocery stores with a 4-year-old in tow. Now she was part of something that demanded attention, something loud and impossible to ignore. The hospital appeared ahead, a sprawling complex of white buildings and emergency entrance bays. Cole navigated to the parking garage, and the other motorcycles followed, their engines echoing off concrete walls like rolling thunder. They parked on the 3rd level. Cole helped Sienna off the bike, steadying her when her legs wobbled from the vibration still humming through her body. "You okay?" he asked. "I think so." "Come on, Hawk's on the cardiac floor." They walked through the hospital in a group, Cole and Margaret leading, Sienna in the middle, and at least 20 other bikers forming a protective circle around her. People stared. Security guards whispered into radios. A nurse at the information desk stood up, her hand hovering over a phone. "We're here to see Thomas Hawkins," Margaret said before anyone could object. "Cardiac ICU. He's expecting us." The nurse looked at her computer, then at the bikers, then back at her computer. "Room 4217. But only 2 visitors at a time." "Understood." They took the elevator in shifts, filling it with leather and the smell of motorcycle exhaust. Sienna rode up with Cole and Margaret, her heart pounding against her ribs for reasons that had nothing to do with the motorcycle ride. The cardiac floor was quiet, all beeping machines and hushed conversations. They found room 4217 at the end of a long hallway. The door was open. Inside, Sienna could see Hawk propped up in a hospital bed, tubes and wires connecting him to machines that monitored every beat of his damaged heart. He looked smaller than he had last night, fragile, human in a way that leather vests and motorcycles usually hid. "Go on," Cole said gently. "He's been waiting." Sienna walked into the room alone. Hawk's eyes tracked her movement, and when he saw her face, something in his expression softened. "You came," he said. His voice was rough, strained from the oxygen tube in his nose. "They didn't really give me a choice." "That sounds like Cole." Hawk tried to smile, but it came out more like a grimace. "Sit down, please." Sienna sat in the chair beside his bed. Up close, she could see the monitors tracking his heartbeat. Irregular, stuttering, the rhythm of an engine trying not to stall. "The doctors said another 5 minutes and I'd have been gone," Hawk said. "Said the aspirin bought me time, said someone who knew what they were doing kept me alive until the paramedics got there." "Anyone would have done the same." "No, they wouldn't have. The gas station attendant locked his door, the woman in scrubs ran to the back of the store. You're the only one who helped." Hawk's hand moved toward her, and Sienna saw how it shook. "Why?" "Because you needed help." "That's it? That's the only reason?" Sienna thought about Maya asking for pancakes, about $8 that could have bought breakfast, about all the times she'd needed help and nobody had been there. "I know what it's like to need help," she said quietly. "I know what it's like when nobody comes." Hawk studied her face, and Sienna had the uncomfortable feeling he was seeing straight through to all the things she tried to hide, the fear, the exhaustion, the barely hanging on desperation of her life. "I want to repay you," he said. "You don't owe me anything." "Yes, I do. You saved my life. The paramedics saved your life. I just bought you time." "Time is everything." Hawk's hand finally reached hers, his massive fingers closing around her smaller ones. "Let me help you, please." "I don't need—" "Yes, you do." The words came out gentle but firm. Cole told me about your car, about your apartment, about your daughter. Don't lie to me and say you don't need help because we both know better. Sienna pulled her hand away. You had someone follow me? I had someone make sure you got home safe. There's a difference. No, there isn't. Sienna. Hawk's voice dropped to something just above a whisper. I have a daughter too. Had a daughter, Lily. She was 6 when she died. The room seemed to contract around those words. Sienna forgot about being followed, forgot about being angry, forgot about everything except the devastation in Hawk's eyes. I'm sorry, she said. Leukemia. We caught it early, but treatment costs more than I could make in 10 lifetimes. I worked 3 jobs. My wife worked 2. We sold everything we owned. It wasn't enough. Hawk's eyes closed briefly. She died because we couldn't afford to save her. So I made a promise. No other parent would lose a child because of money. Not if I could help it. That's why you started the organization. Lily's legacy. We've helped 3,000 families in 8 years, paid medical bills, covered rent, bought groceries, kept lights on, whatever it takes. Hawk opened his eyes again. You saved my life. Let me save yours. I don't need saving. Everyone needs saving sometimes, even the people doing the saving. Sienna sat in that hospital room for another 20 minutes, listening to Hawk talk about Lily, how she'd loved butterflies, how she'd insisted on wearing her princess costume to chemotherapy appointments, how her last words had been asking if the butterflies would find her in heaven. He spoke with the careful precision of someone who'd told the story enough times that the sharp edges had worn smooth, but the pain underneath remained raw as ever. I can't accept money from you, Sienna said when he finally fell quiet. That's not why I helped. I know it's not. That's exactly why you should accept it. Hawk shifted in his bed, wincing at the movement. You think I don't know pride when I see it? I wore it like armor for 2 years after Lily died, refused help from everyone, nearly destroyed myself. Margaret finally sat me down and said, Your pride isn't going to bring her back, but it might kill you before you do something meaningful with the time you have left. She was right. This is different. How? Because I didn't save you so you'd owe me something. And I'm not offering because I owe you. I'm offering because I can. Because helping people is what I do now. Because Lily would have liked you. Hawk's voice cracked on his daughter's name. Please, let me do this one good thing while I'm still breathing. The machines around his bed beeped softly, marking time in electronic pulses. Sienna looked at this man who'd built something beautiful from devastating loss, who'd turned his grief into lifelines for strangers, and she felt her resistance crumbling like old concrete. What exactly are you offering? She asked. We'll talk about that when I'm out of here. For now, just know that help is coming. You don't have to carry everything alone anymore. Cole appeared in the doorway. Visiting hours are almost over. Security's getting nervous about the bikes in the parking garage. Go home to your daughter, Hawk said to Sienna. Hug her tight. Tell her you love her. And tomorrow morning, don't be surprised when things start looking different. Sienna stood up slowly. I don't know how to thank you. You already did. You saw someone dying and you ran toward them instead of away. That's rare. That matters. Hawk's hand found hers again. Go on now. Cole will make sure you get home safe. The ride back to Wong's market was quieter than the ride to the hospital. The other motorcycles had dispersed, heading off in different directions, leaving just Cole and Sienna navigating late afternoon traffic. The sun sat low on the horizon, painting Oakland in shades of orange and gold that made even the roughest neighborhoods look almost beautiful. Cole pulled into the market parking lot and killed his engine. Sienna climbed off the bike and handed him the helmet, her legs steadier this time. Thank you for the ride, she said. Sienna, wait. Cole got off his motorcycle and stood there looking uncomfortable, like he was trying to figure out how to say something difficult. I need to tell you something. Hawk wasn't just some random guy having a heart attack. He's important. The organization he built, it's helped a lot of people. Important people. People with influence. What are you trying to say? I'm saying tomorrow is going to be different. Really different. And I wanted you to hear it from me first, so you'd be prepared. Prepared for what? Cole looked at her for a long moment. for your life to change, for everything to change. Hawk doesn't do anything small. When he helps people, he really helps them. And you saved his life, so what? So just be ready, okay? Whatever happens tomorrow, just remember that we're trying to help. We're on your side. Sienna felt a cold tendril of unease curl in her stomach. Cole, what's going to happen tomorrow? I can't tell you. Hawk wants it to be a surprise. But I can tell you it's good. It's all good, I promise. He climbed back on his bike. Get some sleep tonight. You're going to need it. He rode away before Sienna could ask anything else, leaving her standing in the parking lot with more questions than answers and a sense of foreboding she couldn't shake. She went inside and told her manager she was ready to work. He looked at her skeptically. She'd been gone for 3 hours, but didn't argue. Sienna spent the next 8 hours stocking shelves and running a register and trying not to think about tomorrow, about Hawk's words, about Cole's warning to be ready for everything to change. At midnight, she drove home on fumes that should have run out an hour ago, but somehow hadn't. The Honda coughed and sputtered into the apartment parking lot, and Sienna sat in the driver's seat for a minute after killing the engine, gathering strength for the climb up 3 flights of stairs. Mrs. Chen answered her door before Sienna could knock. She's sleeping, Mrs. Chen said, ushering Sienna inside her apartment. Maya was curled up on Mrs. Chen's couch, covered with a crocheted blanket, her stuffed elephant clutched to her chest. She ate dinner, did her homework. She's a good girl. Thank you. I know I was late again. Don't worry about payment right now. Mrs. Chen waved her hand dismissively. You can pay me when you can pay me. She's no trouble. Sienna bent down and carefully lifted Maya into her arms. Her daughter was getting heavier. 4-year-olds did that, grew when you weren't looking, but she was still small enough to carry. Maya's head settled against Sienna's shoulder without waking. Mrs. Chen, I can't keep asking you to… You're not asking, I'm offering. There's a difference. Mrs. Chen walked Sienna to the door. Sleep well, both of you. Sienna carried Maya upstairs and tucked her into bed without waking her. She stood there for a moment, watching her daughter sleep, and felt the familiar ache of love mixed with fear. She'd do anything for this child. Anything. Even accept help she didn't think she deserved, if it meant giving Maya a better life. She was too exhausted to shower, too tired to eat, too worn down to do anything except fall onto her futon and close her eyes. Sleep came fast, pulling her under like a wave. She didn't hear the motorcycles that began arriving around 3 a.m. She didn't see them parking up and down her street, filling every available space, their riders sitting quietly on their bikes like sentinels. She didn't notice Cole taking up position directly across from her building, or Margaret arriving with a van full of supplies, or the dozens of other people who appeared in the pre-dawn darkness with boxes and clipboards and purpose. She slept through all of it. When her alarm went off at 5:30, Sienna woke to silence. No traffic sounds. No bus brakes squealing. No usual morning noise of a neighborhood coming to life. Just silence, thick and expectant. She got up and walked to the window. Then she stopped breathing. The street below was wall-to-wall motorcycles. Hundreds of them, maybe more than that, stretching as far as she could see in both directions. They lined both sides of the street, parked in driveways, filled the intersection, and standing beside them, leaning against them, sitting on them, were people. So many people. All wearing the same leather vests, all looking up at her building. Sienna's hands started shaking. She backed away from the window and grabbed her phone. 6 missed calls from Cole. 3 voicemails. 12 text messages. She opened the first text. We're here. Don't be scared. Come outside when you're ready. The second. Hawk sent us. We're here to help. The third. Please don't call the police. We're not here to hurt anyone. Sienna heard voices outside her door. Loud voices. Angry voices. She recognized Mr. Patterson from 3C shouting about calling the cops. Mrs. Williams from the first floor, demanding to know what was going on. Other neighbors she'd lived next to for 6 months without really knowing, all of them scared and angry and looking for someone to blame. Then someone pounded on her door hard enough to make it shake in its frame. Sienna Clark! A man's voice rough with fury. Open this door right now! Sienna's heart hammered. She looked toward Maya's room and saw her daughter sitting up in bed, rubbing her eyes, confusion and fear written across her small face. "Mama, what's happening?" "I don't know, baby. Stay in your room, okay? Don't come out." "I'm scared." "I know, me too, but I need you to be brave for me. Can you do that?" Maya nodded, her eyes huge. The pounding came again, harder this time. "I know you're in there. You brought these people to our street. You put our families in danger." More voices joined in. More pounding. Sienna heard Mrs. Chen's voice trying to calm people down, but she was drowned out by the crowd that had apparently gathered in the hallway. Sienna walked to her door on shaking legs and looked through the peephole. At least 15 neighbors filled the hallway, their faces twisted with fear and anger. Mr. Patterson stood closest to her door, his fist raised to pound again. She opened the door 6 inches, keeping the chain lock engaged. "What's going on?" she asked, trying to keep her voice steady. "What's going on?" Mr. Patterson's face was red, a vein pulsing in his temple. "You brought a gang to our street. There are hundreds of motorcycles down there. My kids are terrified." "I didn't bring anyone. I don't know what—" "Liar! They're asking for you by name. They said they're here for Sienna Clark." A woman Sienna had never spoken to before pushed forward. "The police are on their way. You're going to get arrested, and good riddance." "I didn't do anything wrong." Sienna's voice rose despite herself. "I helped someone 2 nights ago. That's all. I didn't ask for any of this." "You helped a gang member. You brought them here. You put all of us in danger." Mr. Patterson slammed his palm against her door. "Get out. Pack your stuff and get out of this building before you get us all killed." Other voices rose in agreement. People Sienna had nodded to in passing, had held doors for, had smiled at in the elevator, all of them screaming at her now to leave, to take her daughter and go, to get out before something terrible happened. Mrs. Chen tried again to intervene. "Everyone calm down. We don't know what—" "Stay out of this, Chen. You're probably in on it too, the way you're always covering for her." Sienna felt tears burning in her eyes. This was her home. These were her neighbors. And they were ready to throw her into the street based on fear and assumption and the sight of motorcycles they didn't understand. "Mama!" Maya appeared in the living room crying, her elephant clutched so tight her knuckles had gone white. "Mama, why are they yelling?" The sight of Maya crying unlocked something in Sienna's chest. She was done being scared, done apologizing, done accepting that she deserved whatever the world threw at her. "Go back to your room, sweet pea," Sienna said, her voice suddenly calm. "It's okay. Mama's going to handle this." She closed the door, unhooked the chain lock, and opened it fully. The hallway went quiet. 15 hostile faces stared at her, and Sienna stared back. "I don't know why those people are down there," she said clearly. "I don't know what they want, but I do know that 2 nights ago I watched a man collapse at a gas station, and everyone around him walked away. The store clerk locked his door. People crossed the street to avoid him. I was the only one who helped. I spent my last $8 on aspirin and water because he was dying and I couldn't just walk away." "So what?" someone shouted. "That doesn't give them the right to—" "I'm not finished." Sienna's voice cut through the noise like a blade. "That man's name is Thomas Hawkins. He runs an organization called Lily's Legacy. They help families who can't afford medical bills. They help people like us. Like all of us. And apparently they wanted to thank me for saving his life. I didn't ask for this. I didn't want this. But I'm not going to apologize for doing the right thing." "The right thing?" Mr. Patterson's laugh was harsh. "The right thing is not bringing gang members to a residential street. They're not gang members. They're—" The building's front door slammed open 3 floors below, the sound echoing up the stairwell. Heavy footsteps pounded on the stairs. The crowd in the hallway turned, fear rippling through them like wind through grass. Cole appeared at the top of the stairs, breathing hard, his face flushed. Behind him came Margaret and at least 10 other bikers, their vests and boots and presents filling the narrow hallway. "Get away from her door," Cole said quietly. "Right now." "You can't tell us what to do." Mr. Patterson stood his ground, but his voice shook. "This is our building. And she's our family." Margaret stepped forward, her gray braid swinging. "You want to scream at someone? Scream at me. But you leave her alone. We just want you people to leave, all of you, before someone gets hurt." Nobody's getting hurt. A new voice, deeper and somehow familiar despite the rasp of exhaustion in it. The crowd parted, and Sienna saw Hawk slowly climbing the stairs, one hand on the railing, the other pressed against his chest. He was pale and moving carefully, but he was there, out of the hospital, standing in her building's hallway. "Hawk, you shouldn't be here," Cole said. The doctors said a lot of things. None of them matter right now." Hawk reached the landing and looked around at the neighbors who'd been screaming at Sienna's door. "My name is Thomas Hawkins. 8 years ago, my daughter, Lily, died because I couldn't afford her cancer treatment. Since then, I've dedicated my life to making sure no other parent has to watch their child die for lack of money. My organization has helped over 3,000 families. We've paid medical bills totaling $16 million. We've kept families in their homes when they faced eviction. We've put food on tables and kept lights on, and made sure kids could go to school instead of going hungry." The hallway had gone completely silent. Even Mr. Patterson had stopped talking. "2 nights ago, I had a massive heart attack at a gas station," Hawk continued. "I should have died. I would have died. Except this woman," he pointed at Sienna, "spent her last $8 to save my life. Not because she knew who I was, not because she wanted something in return, but because she saw a human being in trouble and she couldn't walk away." "That's very touching," Mr. Patterson said, though his voice had lost its edge. "But it doesn't explain why you brought hundreds of people to our street in the middle of the night." "We're here because Sienna saved one of the best humans I've ever known," Margaret said. "We're here because that deserves recognition, and we're here because we take care of our own." "She's not one of you," someone shouted from the back of the crowd. "Yes," Hawk said simply, "she is. From the moment she knelt beside me on that pavement, she became family, and we protect our family." Sienna felt something break open in her chest. Not pain, but its opposite. Relief. Recognition. The understanding that she wasn't alone anymore, that these strangers with their motorcycles and their vests had somehow claimed her as one of their own. "Mr. Patterson," Hawk said, his eyes finding the angry man who'd been pounding on Sienna's door. "You have a son, Michael. He's 7. Last year, he was diagnosed with juvenile diabetes." Mr. Patterson went still. "How do you—" "Lily's legacy paid for his insulin when your insurance denied coverage. We covered 3 months of supplies until you could get the denial overturned." Hawk turned to another neighbor, an older woman Sienna recognized from the second floor. "Mrs. Williams, your husband needed emergency surgery 2 years ago. We paid the deductible you couldn't afford." Mrs. Williams' face had gone white. Hawk pointed to another neighbor, then another, reciting names and circumstances with the precision of someone who'd memorized every person his organization had ever helped. By the time he finished, half the people in the hallway were crying, and the other half looked like they wanted to disappear through the floor. "We don't advertise who we help," Hawk said. "We don't ask for recognition or gratitude. We just help. That's what we do. That's all we've ever done. And now we're here to help the woman who saved my life. If that makes you uncomfortable, I'm sorry. But we're not leaving until we've done what we came to do." "Which is what?" Sienna asked, speaking for the first time since the bikers had arrived. "What did you come to do?" Hawk smiled, and despite the exhaustion in his face, despite the way he swayed on his feet like standing was costing him everything, the smile was genuine. "We came to make sure you and your daughter never have to choose between medicine and food again. We came to give you back the breathing room that poverty stole. We came to thank you the only way we know how, by making your life easier." "I can't accept—" "Yes, you can. You will. Because Maya deserves a mother who isn't working herself to death. Because you deserve to sleep at night without wondering how you'll pay rent. Because $8 bought me my life back, and I'm going to spend the rest of it making sure that gift means something." The hallway had gone silent again, but this time the silence felt different, softer, less hostile. Sienna saw Mrs. Williams wiping tears from her face, saw Mr. Patterson looking at his shoes, saw Mrs. Chen smiling with an expression that said she'd known all along that Sienna was someone special. "What do you need me to do?" Sienna asked. "Right now, just trust us. Can you do that?" Sienna thought about Maya crying in her room, about the empty refrigerator and the overdue rent and the car running on fumes. About 2 years of barely surviving, of making impossible choices, of trying to be enough when enough kept getting further away. Yes, she said, I can trust you. Hawk nodded. Good. Cole, Margaret, start bringing things up. Everyone else, let's give Sienna and her neighbors some space. We've got work to do. The bikers moved with practiced efficiency, heading back down the stairs in orderly groups. The neighbors slowly dispersed, some returning to their apartments, others lingering to whisper apologies to Sienna that she accepted with nods because she didn't know what else to do. Mrs. Chen squeezed Sienna's hand before heading back to her own apartment. I always knew you were special, she whispered. I'm glad someone finally noticed. Within minutes, the hallway was empty except for Sienna, Maya, who'd ventured out of her room now that the yelling had stopped, and Hawk, who'd sat down on the top step because standing had finally become impossible. You should be in the hospital, Sienna said. Probably, but some things are more important than doctor's orders. Hawk looked at Maya, who was peeking around Sienna's legs. Hi there. You must be Maya. Maya nodded shyly. Your mama saved my life. Did you know that? Another nod. She's pretty amazing. I bet you already knew that too. She's the best mama ever, Maya said, her voice small but certain. I believe you. Hawk smiled at her, then looked at Sienna. Thank you for trusting us. You won't regret it. Below on the street, engines started rumbling to life. Not all of them. Some of the motorcycles stayed, their riders clearly planning to stick around, but enough that the noise level dropped to something approaching normal. Sienna watched through the hallway window as bikes pulled away, as the crowd thinned, as her street started to look less like an invasion and more like a gathering. Cole appeared at the top of the stairs again, this time carrying 2 boxes that looked heavy. Behind him came Margaret with more boxes, and behind her came a steady stream of people bringing supplies. Where do you want everything? Cole asked. Sienna looked at the boxes, at the people filling her hallway, at Hawk sitting on the steps looking exhausted but satisfied. She looked at Maya holding her elephant, at Mrs. Chen watching from her doorway with tears in her eyes, at the neighbors who'd screamed at her 30 minutes ago now standing in their own doorways with expressions ranging from shame to wonder. I don't understand what's happening, Sienna admitted. You will, Hawk said. Just open your door and let us in. Let us help. That's all you have to do. So Sienna opened her door, and everything changed. They came through Sienna's door like a carefully choreographed flood, Cole and Margaret leading, followed by people carrying boxes labeled in black marker with words Sienna couldn't process fast enough. Groceries, supplies, clothing, furniture. They moved through her small apartment with the efficiency of people who'd done this before, who knew exactly where everything needed to go and why. Wait, Sienna said, her voice lost in the organized chaos. Wait, I don't... Just let them work, Hawk said from the doorway. He'd refused to come inside, claiming the stairs had taken everything he had left, but Sienna suspected he wanted to give her space to process what was happening. They know what they're doing. Maya clutched Sienna's hand, her eyes wide as strangers filled their apartment with purpose and supplies. A woman with kind eyes and gray-streaked hair knelt down in front of Maya. Hi, sweetie, my name is Diana. What's your favorite color? Maya looked up at Sienna for permission. Sienna nodded, still too overwhelmed to do much else. Purple, Maya whispered. Purple is a wonderful color. Do you want to help me unpack some things for your room? Okay. Diana led Maya toward her bedroom. Sienna watched them go with a mixture of relief and unease. She trusted these people. Hawk had earned that much. But trusting strangers in her home with her daughter went against every instinct she'd developed in 2 years of barely surviving. She's safe, Margaret said quietly, appearing at Sienna's elbow. Diana has 4 grandkids. She's as gentle as they come. I know, Sienna stopped, unable to articulate the tangle of emotions threatening to choke her. This is too much. It's exactly enough. Come on, let me show you what we brought. Margaret guided Sienna to the kitchen, where 2 men were already unpacking boxes onto her scarred countertop. One of them, a black man in his 40s with sergeant stripes tattooed on his forearm, looked up and smiled. You must be Sienna. I'm Jerome. We're stocking your kitchen first. Figured you'd need that most. Sienna watched in stunned silence as Jerome and his companion unpacked box after box. Fresh vegetables, fruit that actually looked ripe instead of bruised, meat in packages that bore today's date, milk, eggs, cheese, butter, bread that was soft instead of hard, pasta, rice, canned goods, spices she'd never been able to afford. They filled her refrigerator until it couldn't hold anymore, then started on the cabinets. "This is too much," Sienna said again. "I can't accept all this." "You can and you will," Jerome said without looking up from arranging canned vegetables. "This is just the beginning." "The beginning of what?" Margaret pulled out a kitchen chair and sat down, gesturing for Sienna to do the same. "Hawk doesn't do anything halfway. When he decides to help someone, he really helps them. We've got a whole plan worked out." "What kind of plan?" "The kind that makes sure you never have to choose between feeding your daughter and paying rent again." Margaret's expression softened. "I know this feels overwhelming. I know you're used to doing everything yourself, to not asking for help, to just surviving day by day. But you saved Hawk's life, and in doing that, you became part of our family. This is what family does. You don't even know me. We know enough. We know you're a single mother working 2 jobs. We know your car is held together with prayer and stubbornness. We know you spent your last $8 on aspirin for a dying stranger. We know you're drowning and you won't ask for a life preserver because you think you don't deserve one." Margaret reached across the table and took Sienna's hand. "You're wrong. You deserve everything we're about to give you." "Which is what exactly?" Before Margaret could answer, Cole appeared in the kitchen doorway. "Sienna, we need you to look at something." Sienna followed him to the living room, where her ancient futon had been replaced by an actual couch, deep blue fabric that looked like it had never been sat on, with cushions that promised comfort instead of springs poking through worn upholstery. A new coffee table sat in front of it. Her old television with its green tint was gone, replaced by something 3 times the size mounted on her wall. "We didn't ask," Cole said quickly. "I know we should have asked, but Hawk was insistent about the furniture. He said nobody should have to sleep on a futon that's older than their kid. How did you even get this up here so fast?" "We've been planning since yesterday, had everything staged in trucks down the street. Once Hawk gave the signal, we just started moving." Cole gestured around the room. "There's more, a lot more. But I wanted you to see this first." Maya's voice carried from her bedroom, high and excited. Sienna walked down the short hallway and stopped in the doorway, her breath catching in her throat. Maya's room had been transformed. Her small bed with its sagging mattress was gone, replaced by a twin bed with a purple comforter covered in stars. New sheets, new pillows. A bookshelf that hadn't been there 10 minutes ago, already half filled with books still in their plastic wrapping. A toy chest in the corner, purple to match the bedspread. Curtains that actually blocked light instead of just decorating the window. Diana was helping Maya arrange stuffed animals on the bed. Not just Maya's beloved elephant, but new ones too, a whole collection of creatures that made Maya's eyes shine with wonder. "Mama, look!" Maya held up a stuffed giraffe almost as big as she was. "Her name is Sophie, and she's mine." "I see, baby." Sienna's voice came out rough. "She's beautiful. Diana says I can keep everything. All the books and the animals and the blanket with stars. Can I really keep it all?" Sienna looked at Diana, who nodded with gentle certainty. "Yes, sweet pea, you can keep it all." Maya launched herself at Sienna, wrapping small arms around her mother's waist. "This is the best day ever. Better than Christmas. Better than my birthday." "I'm glad you're happy, baby." "Are you happy too, Mama?" Sienna looked around the room, at the bed that would actually support her daughter's growing body, at the books that would feed her mind, at the toys that would let her be a child instead of a child learning too early that wanting things was futile. She thought about the groceries filling her kitchen, about the couch in her living room, about all of it appearing like something out of a dream she'd been too practical to let herself have. "Yes," Sienna whispered. "I'm happy too." She left Maya with Diana and walked back to the kitchen, where Jerome had finished with the groceries and was now assembling what looked like a coffee maker on the counter. "We brought coffee too," he said, noting her expression. "Good stuff. None of that generic instant powder, Margaret said every parent deserves real coffee. Jerome, I don't know what to say. Don't say anything yet. We're not done. Margaret appeared with a clipboard and reading glasses perched on her nose. Okay, let's go through the list. Kitchen is done. Furniture is done. Maya's room is done. Living room is done. Bathroom supplies are being handled right now. We've got someone replacing your shower curtain and that broken toilet seat. You noticed my toilet seat? We noticed everything, part of the intake process. Margaret consulted her clipboard. We've also got clothing coming, sizes for both you and Maya, basics plus some nicer things for job interviews. School supplies for Maya, a new backpack because hers has holes, and she paused, looking at Sienna over her glasses. We've taken care of some other things too. What other things? Your rent. We paid Marcus 3 months' worth, plus the 2 weeks you were behind. He's not going to be sending you any more eviction notices. Sienna sat down hard in the kitchen chair. You what? 3 months' rent gives you breathing room to get stable, and before you argue, it's already done. The check was delivered an hour ago. I can't let you It's done, Sienna. Let it be done. Margaret set down her clipboard. We also had your car towed. You did what? Sienna's voice rose sharply. Relax. We towed it to Rodriguez Auto Shop on 14th. They're replacing your transmission, fixing the exhaust, new tires, full service. Should be ready by tomorrow afternoon. I can't afford that. You're not paying for it. Lily's legacy is. The shop owner, Carlos Rodriguez, his daughter had a brain tumor 3 years ago. Ashwan. We covered the surgery when his insurance denied it. He does all our car work at cost, sometimes for free. Margaret smiled. You'd be surprised how many people we've helped who are happy to help us back. Sienna put her head in her hands. This is insane. This is all insane. This is what we do. Cole pulled out another chair and sat down. Hawk built this organization from the ground up. He started with his own money, sold everything he and his wife owned after Lily died. Then other people started donating. People who'd been helped, people who believed in the mission, people who wanted their money to actually make a difference. Now we've got funding from private donors, small businesses, a few corporations who like the tax write-off. We run lean, keep overhead low, and put every dollar where it counts. Which is into people like me. Into people exactly like you, single parents, working poor, people who are doing everything right and still falling behind because the system is designed to keep them down. Cole leaned forward, his expression intense. You work 2 jobs, 14 hours a day sometimes. You take care of your daughter, you pay your bills when you can. You don't drink, don't do drugs, don't waste money on stupid things, and you're still drowning. That's not your fault. That's the fault of a world that pays poverty wages and charges middle-class prices. So you're here to fix it? We're here to give you a fighting chance, Margaret tapped her clipboard. Which brings us to the big thing. The thing Hawk really wanted me to talk to you about. Sienna looked up. What big thing? A job. A real one. Full-time, benefits, salary instead of hourly wages. Doing what? Working for Lily's legacy. We need someone to handle intake, meeting with families, assessing needs, coordinating services. It's a lot of paperwork, a lot of phone calls, a lot of holding people's hands while they're at their lowest point. Margaret's expression gentled. You'd be good at it. You know what it's like to need help. You know how to show up when someone's dying. That combination is rare. I don't have any experience with that kind of work. You have life experience. That's worth more than a degree. Cole pulled out his phone and brought up something on the screen. The position pays $45,000 a year. Health insurance, dental, vision, paid time off, sick days. The office is in downtown Oakland, but we work with your schedule. If you need to start late to drop Maya at school, that's fine. If you need to leave early for a doctor's appointment, no problem. We care about the work getting done, not about you sitting at a desk for exactly 8 hours. $45,000 a year. Sienna tried to do the math, tried to calculate what that meant compared to the $18,000 she'd made last year working herself to exhaustion. It was more than double. It was impossible. Why would you offer me this? She asked. You don't know if I can do the work. Hawk knows. He's been reading people for 40 years. He says you've got the heart for it, and that's the part we can't teach. Margaret closed her clipboard. The training we can do, the systems you can learn, but caring about people, really caring, that's either there or it isn't. You've got it. I need to think about this. Take all the time you need. We'll take until Monday. That's when the position starts. Cole grinned at Sienna's expression. I'm kidding, mostly, but seriously, we'd like an answer soon. We've got 3 other families waiting for intake assessments, and we've been running short-staffed for 2 months. Sienna stood up and walked to the window. Outside, the street was still lined with motorcycles, though fewer than before. Some of the riders had left. Others remained, standing in small groups, talking and laughing like they were at a reunion instead of a rescue mission. She saw Mrs. Chen on the sidewalk talking to Margaret's husband. Sienna assumed it was her husband based on how comfortable they looked together, and they were both smiling. What happens if I say no? Sienna asked without turning around. Then we wish you well and hope you'll reconsider. Margaret's voice was firm. We're not going to force you to accept help, but we're also not going to take back what we've already given. The furniture stays. The groceries stay. The rent is paid. Your car gets fixed. Those things aren't conditional on you taking the job. That doesn't make sense. Why give me all this if I might say no? Because you saved Hawk's life, and that deserves recognition regardless of what happens next. Because Maya deserves a bed that doesn't hurt her back. Because basic human dignity shouldn't be something you have to earn. Sienna turned around. Jerome had left the kitchen at some point, giving them privacy. It was just her, Margaret, and Cole sitting around her scratched kitchen table that tomorrow would probably be replaced too. If I say yes, Sienna said slowly, what happens to my other jobs? You quit them. You work for us full time. You focus on one job instead of juggling 3. Cole leaned back in his chair. I know that's scary. I know putting all your eggs in one basket feels risky when you've spent years diversifying just to survive. But that's the whole point. You shouldn't have to work yourself to death to keep the lights on. And if it doesn't work out, if I'm terrible at the job, then we train you better. Look, we're not expecting perfection. We're expecting effort. Show up, do your best, care about the people you're helping. That's it. That's the job. Margaret stood up and refilled her coffee cup from the new coffee maker, then poured one for Sienna without asking. My first job with Lily's Legacy was filing paperwork. I was a mess. Got everything wrong for the first month. But I cared and I learned, and now I run half the organization's operations. Hawk believes in growing people, not just hiring them. Sienna accepted the coffee cup and wrapped her hands around it, feeling the warmth seep into her palms. The coffee smelled expensive, rich, like something from a cafe instead of her kitchen. Can I sleep on it? She asked. Can I have tonight to think? Of course. Cole stood up. We'll be back tomorrow morning to finish up a few things. You can give us your answer then. What things are left to finish, Cole and Margaret exchanged a look that Sienna couldn't quite read. You'll see, Margaret said. For now, just enjoy your new furniture and spend time with Maya. Cook her a real dinner. Let yourself breathe for the first time in 2 years. They left together, and slowly the apartment emptied as other volunteers finished their tasks and filed out. Diana was the last to go, giving Maya a hug that made the little girl glow with happiness. You have a special mama, Diana said to Maya. Don't forget that. I won't. Thank you for the giraffe. You're welcome, sweetie. When the door finally closed behind the last person, Sienna stood in her transformed apartment and tried to process what had just happened. The silence felt different now, not empty, but full. Full of possibility, full of hope she was afraid to name because naming it might make it disappear. Mama? Maya appeared at her elbow, the giant giraffe clutched in her arms. Is this real, or am I dreaming? It's real, baby. I think it's real. Can we have dinner? A real dinner? With the food they brought? Sienna walked to the refrigerator and opened it, staring at the abundance inside. Fresh chicken. Vegetables she could actually cook instead of serving from a can. Butter for the pan. Seasonings that cost more than $1. She could make Maya a real meal. She could make herself a real meal. Yes, Sienna said, her voice thick. We can have a real dinner. She cooked while Maya sat at the kitchen table, alternating between playing with Sophie the giraffe and telling Sienna everything about her day with Diana. The The woman had apparently told Maya stories about her grandchildren, about places she'd traveled, about the work Lily's legacy did around the country. Diana said they help thousands of people every year, Maya reported, making Sophie dance across the table. She said your mama is a hero because she saved Mr. Hawk's life. I'm not a hero, Sweet Pea. I just did what anyone should do. But not everyone did it. Diana said lots of people walked away. You didn't walk away. Sienna plated the chicken and vegetables, more food than they'd had for dinner in months, and set it in front of Maya. Her daughter's eyes went wide. This is so much food. Eat what you can. We've got more if you're still hungry. They ate dinner together at the kitchen table, and for the first time in longer than Sienna could remember, she didn't have to ration every bite. She didn't have to give Maya the bigger portion while telling herself she wasn't that hungry. She didn't have to save half for tomorrow's lunch. They just ate until they were full, and there was still food left over. After dinner, Maya wanted to show Sienna every single thing in her new room. They spent an hour going through books, naming stuffed animals, and arranging everything just so. Maya insisted on sleeping with Sophie, the giraffe, and her old elephant, claiming they were best friends now and couldn't be separated. Mama, Maya said as Sienna tucked her into the new bed with its soft purple comforter. Are we rich now? No, baby, we're not rich. But we have so much stuff, and the apartment looks different, and you made so much food for dinner. We're not rich. We just have people who want to help us. There's a difference. Why do they want to help us? Sienna thought about Hawk lying on the pavement, his face turning gray, about $8 and a split-second choice, about the way one small act of kindness had somehow opened a door she hadn't known existed. Because I helped one of them when he needed it, Sienna said, and they believe in helping people back. Is that what you're going to do at your new job? Help people? I don't know if I'm going to take the job yet. Why not? It sounds like a good job. It is a good job. I'm just scared, I guess. Maya sat up in bed, her expression serious in the way only small children could manage. Of what? Of it not being real. Of it all going away. Of letting myself believe things can be better, and then finding out I was wrong. But Mama, what if you're right? What if things really are better? Out of the mouths of children, Sienna's mother used to say, simple wisdom that adults complicated with fear and cynicism and self-protection. You're pretty smart, you know that? Sienna kissed Maya's forehead. Diana told me I was smart. She said I get it from you. Diana is very kind. Now go to sleep. It's way past your bedtime. Will you stay until I fall asleep? Of course. Sienna sat on the edge of Maya's new bed, comfortable, supportive, everything a child's bed should be, and watched her daughter drift off with Sophie the giraffe and the elephant tucked under her arms. The nightlight cast a soft glow across the room, illuminating the bookshelf and the toy chest and all the physical proof that today had actually happened. When Maya's breathing evened out into sleep, Sienna stood up carefully and walked to her own room. She'd been avoiding it, afraid of what she'd find, but she couldn't put it off any longer. They'd replaced her futon with a real bed, queen-sized, with a headboard, new sheets, new pillows, a comforter that looked like it cost more than she made in a week. On her dresser, her old dresser, the one piece of furniture they hadn't replaced, sat an envelope with her name written in careful cursive. Sienna picked it up with shaking hands and opened it. Inside was a letter written on Lily's legacy letterhead and a check that made her vision blur. The letter was from Hawk, written in the same careful cursive as the envelope. Sienna, you gave me my life back. Let me give you yours. This check covers 3 months of expenses, rent, utilities, food, everything. Use it to breathe. Use it to sleep without nightmares about eviction notices. Use it to be present for Maya instead of working yourself to death. You deserve rest. You deserve peace. You deserve the chance to rebuild your life without drowning in poverty. The job offer stands if you want it, but even if you don't, this money is yours. No strings, no expectations, just gratitude from a man who gets to watch his grandchildren grow up because you wouldn't walk away. Thank you for seeing a human being instead of a stranger. Thank you for choosing compassion when the world had given you every reason to choose differently. You saved my life. Now let us save yours. With deepest gratitude, Thomas Hawkins. The check was for $25,000. Sienna sat down on her new bed and stared at the number, at the zeros that seemed impossible, at the signature at the bottom that made it real. $25,000. More money than she'd made in 2 years. Enough to change everything. She thought about Maya asking if they were rich now. They weren't rich, but they were no longer drowning. They were no longer one emergency away from homelessness. They were no longer choosing between medicine and food. They were going to be okay. The realization hit her like a wave, and Sienna finally let herself cry. Not the quick, controlled crying she'd mastered in parking garages and late-night kitchen floors, but the deep, shaking sobs of someone who'd been holding everything together for so long that falling apart felt like relief. She cried for 2 years of fear. For every time she'd told Maya they couldn't afford something. For every bill she'd juggled, and every meal she'd skipped, and every night she'd lain awake calculating impossible math. She cried for her mother, who tried to help but had been drowning herself. She cried for the person she'd been before poverty had worn her down to just survival. And then she cried because it was over, because tomorrow she could wake up without panic, because Maya could have breakfast, because the rent was paid and the car would run and she could actually, finally, breathe. When the tears finally stopped, Sienna lay back on her new bed and stared at the ceiling. No water stain, no crack, just fresh white paint and the promise of tomorrow. Her phone buzzed on the nightstand. A text from Cole. "Hope you're doing okay. Big day tomorrow. Sleep well?" Sienna typed back. "What's tomorrow?" The response came immediately. "You'll see. Trust us." She wanted to be annoyed by the mystery, but she was too exhausted to manage it. Instead, she set her phone aside, pulled the comfortable blanket up to her chin, and let herself sink into the first real rest she'd had in 2 years. Tomorrow would bring whatever it brought. But tonight, for the first time in longer than she could remember, Sienna Clark went to sleep without fear. Part 5. Lưu ý: viết 6.000 đến 6.500 từ liên kết liền mạch với các phần trước trong câu chuyện và hội thoại tạo thành một câu chuyện liền mạch khi ghép lại. Mọi phân liền mạch với phần trước, không giới thiệu lại câu chuyện ở đầu phần mới. Liên kết các phần của câu chuyện một cách liền mạch. Sử dụng câu chuyện tiếp giữa các phần. Duy trì chủ đề, tránh ngắt quãng đột ngột, không sử dụng gạch đầu dòng hoặc tiêu đề phụ, phong cách kể chuyện Mỹ, Hoa Kỳ, giống văn giàu cảm xúc. Kể theo ngôi thứ 3, giữ đồ kịch tính không viết lan man. Phần 5 giải quyết hết vấn đề và kết thúc trọn vẹn câu chuyện. Lưu ý trả lời trong mục tin nhắn không nhảy sang document, chi dần bắt buộc, không được xuất hiện trong nội dung truyền. Đây là một câu chuyện điện ảnh hoàn toàn hư cấu được tạo ra chỉ nhằm mục đích giải trí, không đề cập hay ngụ ý rằng nó dựa trên sự kiện có thật, người thật hoặc câu chuyện có thật, không sử dụng các cụm từ như dựa trên một câu chuyện có thật, theo ghi chép hoặc bất cứ điều gì tương tự. Tất cả các nhân vật, địa điểm, tổ chức và sự kiện phải hoàn toàn hư cấu. Show more. 10:08 Part 5. Sienna woke to sunlight streaming through curtains that actually blocked the morning glare. Curtains she didn't remember anyone installing yesterday, but there they were, filtering the light into something soft and golden. For a moment she lay perfectly still, afraid that moving would shatter the dream, and she'd wake up on her old futon with Maya asking for pancakes they didn't have. Then Maya's voice carried from the kitchen, bright and happy, talking to someone. Sienna bolted upright. She found her daughter sitting at the kitchen table with Mrs. Chen, both of them eating what looked like fresh pastries and drinking orange juice from the new glasses that had appeared yesterday. "Mama!" Maya's face lit up. "Mrs. Chen brought breakfast, real breakfast with the croissants that have chocolate inside." "I hope you don't mind," Mrs. Chen said, though her expression suggested she knew exactly how much Sienna would mind, which was not at all. "I wanted to celebrate with you both, and I thought you might need a moment to process everything before the day begins." "What happens today?" Sienna asked, accepting the coffee Mrs. Chen offered her, real coffee from the expensive maker, rich and perfect. "I'm not entirely sure, but there are people gathering outside again. Not as many as yesterday, but enough." Mrs. Chen's eyes twinkled. "I think your friends have more surprises planned." Sienna walked to the window and looked down. Mrs. Chen was right. At least 20 motorcycles lined the street, and she recognized Cole's bike immediately. He stood beside it talking to Margaret, and both of them kept glancing up at her building like they were waiting for something. "I should get dressed," Sienna said. "Take your time, Eat something first. You're going to need your strength." Mrs. Chen patted the chair beside Maya. "Come, sit. Tell me how it feels to sleep in a real bed." Sienna sat and ate a chocolate croissant that tasted like something from a dream. Maya chattered about Sophie the giraffe and all the books Diana had brought, about how she couldn't wait to show her friends at school her new backpack. Mrs. Chen listened with the patient attention of someone who understood that ordinary moments were miracles when you'd been living without them. "The whole building is talking about yesterday," Mrs. Chen said quietly after Maya had finished eating and gone to play in her room. "Mr. Patterson came by last night to apologize. Mrs. Williams, too. They're ashamed of how they acted. They were scared. I understand that. Fear is not an excuse for cruelty. But they know that now." Mrs. Chen squeezed Sienna's hand. "You showed us all something important yesterday. You showed us what it looks like to help someone without counting the cost. That matters." A knock at the door interrupted them. Sienna opened it to find Cole standing in the hallway, looking fresh and awake despite the early hour. "Morning," he said. "You ready?" "Ready for what?" "Hawk wants to see you. He's downstairs." "He should be in the hospital." "Try telling him that. Come on, get Maya. She should be there for this too." Sienna gathered Maya, who was thrilled at the prospect of seeing the motorcycle people again. They went downstairs together, Mrs. Chen following behind with a knowing smile that suggested she understood more about what was happening than Sienna did. The street had transformed overnight. Someone had set up a small stage on the sidewalk, nothing fancy, just a raised platform with a microphone and speakers. Folding chairs formed neat rows facing the stage, and most of them were already occupied by neighbors Sienna recognized. Mr. Patterson sat in the front row with his wife and son. Ms. Williams was there with her husband. The Rodriguez family from the auto shop. Families Sienna had seen, but never really known, all gathered like they were waiting for something important. Hawk stood beside the stage, leaning heavily on a cane but standing nonetheless. He wore a clean leather vest over a button-down shirt, and despite the pallor in his face and the careful way he moved, he looked solid, present, alive. "There she is," Hawk said as Sienna approached, "the woman of the hour." "What's going on? What is all this?" "This is the part where we tell your story, where we make sure everyone knows what you did and why it matters." Hawk gestured to the stage. "But first, I need to ask you something. Have you made a decision about the job?" Sienna looked at Maya holding her hand, at the neighbors filling the chairs, at Cole and Margaret standing ready to support whatever came next. She thought about Hawk's letter, about $25,000 in her bank account that meant she didn't have to decide out of desperation. She could choose, really choose. "I want the job," Sienna said. "I want to help people the way you helped me. I want Maya to see that kindness matters, that it comes back, that the world can be better than it seems." Hawk's smile was worth whatever nerves Sienna felt about public speaking and stages and neighbors watching. "Good. That's real good. Come on then, let's make it official." He led her to the stage, moving slowly but surely. Margaret appeared with a wheelchair, which Hawk waved away with obvious annoyance. "I'm not sitting down for this," he said firmly. "I'm standing up to thank the woman who saved my life." He climbed the 3 steps to the stage with Cole's help, then turned and offered his hand to Sienna. She took it and let him guide her up. From the stage, she could see the full gathering, at least 60 people now, neighbors and bikers mixed together, all of them looking up at her with expressions ranging from curiosity to gratitude to shame. Hawk took the microphone. The speaker squealed for a moment before settling into clarity. "Most of you know me," Hawk said, his voice carrying across the street. "For those who don't, my name is Thomas Hawkins. I founded Lily's Legacy 8 years ago after my daughter died because I couldn't afford her medical treatment. Since then, we've helped over 3,000 families. We've paid medical bills, covered rent, bought groceries, kept lights on. We've done everything we can to make sure no parent has to choose between saving their child and keeping a roof over their head." The crowd was silent, attentive. Sienna saw Mr. Patterson wipe his eyes. "2 nights ago, I had a massive heart attack at a gas station on San Pablo Avenue. I collapsed. I was dying. Most people would have walked away. Hell, most people did walk away. The store clerk locked his door. A woman in scrubs hid in the back. But this woman," Hawk gestured to Sienna, "she ran toward me instead of away. She spent her last $8 on aspirin and water. She kept me conscious until the paramedics arrived. The doctors told me later that without her intervention, I'd have been dead before the ambulance got there." Sienna felt her cheeks burning. Maya squeezed her hand from where she stood beside her mother on the stage. "Here's what you need to understand about those $8, Hawk continued. "That was everything Sienna had. That was her daughter's breakfast money. That was the gas to get to work. She gave me everything she had, and she did it without hesitation, without knowing who I was, without expecting anything in return. She saved a stranger because that's who she is." Hawk paused, and Sienna saw him struggling with emotion. Cole moved closer, ready to help if needed, but Hawk waved him back. "Yesterday, we came here to thank her, to give back some of what she gave me. But we also came to teach everyone here a lesson about dignity and judgment." Hawk's voice hardened slightly. "Some of you saw our motorcycles and our vests and decided we were dangerous. Some of you screamed at Sienna for bringing us here. Some of you demanded she leave this building for the crime of helping someone." Mr. Patterson's head dropped. Several other neighbors looked at their hands. "I don't tell you this to shame you," Hawk said, his voice softening again. "I tell you this because fear makes us forget our humanity. It makes us lash out at the very people who deserve our gratitude. Sienna could have let me die. She could have driven past that gas station. She could have decided, like so many others do, that someone else's emergency wasn't her problem. But she didn't. She chose compassion, and for that choice, some of you condemned her." The silence was thick now, heavy with recognition and regret. "But here's the beautiful thing about Sienna," Hawk said, turning to look at her with warmth in his eyes. "She forgave you before you even asked, because that's who she is. Someone who sees the best in people even when they're showing her their worst." Margaret appeared at the base of the stage with a large folder. She climbed up and handed it to Hawk, who opened it and pulled out an official-looking document. "Sienna Clark, it is my honor and privilege to offer you a position as Family Services Coordinator for Lily's Legacy. Full-time employment, $45,000 annual salary, comprehensive benefits including health, dental, and vision insurance for you and Maya. 4 weeks paid vacation, sick leave, and flexible scheduling to accommodate your daughter's needs." Hawk held out the document. "Will you accept?" Sienna took the contract with shaking hands. She'd already said yes, but seeing it in writing, seeing her name at the top of an official employment contract with benefits and salary and promises of stability, made it real in a way her agreement hadn't. "I accept," she said, her voice barely audible even with the microphone. "Louder," Hawk said gently. "Let everyone hear you claim what you deserve." Sienna lifted her chin and spoke into the microphone. "I accept. Thank you." The crowd erupted in applause. Maya jumped up and down, clapping her small hands together. Mrs. Chen dabbed at her eyes with a handkerchief. Even Mr. Patterson was smiling through his tears. "There's more," Hawk said when the applause died down. He looked at Margaret, who nodded and disappeared into the crowd. "We've been thinking about expansion, about creating community spaces where people can access our services without having to travel downtown. Places where families can get help quickly, where they can find support from people who understand their struggles." Margaret returned with another person Sienna didn't recognize, a woman in a business suit carrying an architect's folder. "This is Sandra Mitchell," Hawk said. "She's an architect who specializes in community development. Sandra, tell them about the project." Sandra stepped up to the microphone, unfolding what looked like blueprints. "Lily's Legacy has purchased the vacant lot 2 blocks from here on Roosevelt Avenue. We're going to build a community center, 3,500 square feet dedicated to family services, food distribution, medical consultation, job training, and childcare support. Construction begins next month. We're projecting completion in 6 months." The crowd murmured with excitement. Sienna knew the lot Sandra was talking about. It had been vacant for years, accumulating trash and broken glass and all the markers of neighborhood neglect. "We're calling it Clark House," Hawk said simply. "Named after the woman who reminded us all why we do this work. Named after someone who chose compassion when she had every reason to walk away." Sienna's legs went weak. Cole appeared at her elbow, steadying her. "You're naming it after me?" she whispered. "We're naming it after what you represent. Dignity, kindness. The understanding that everyone deserves help because everyone is human." Hawk smiled. "Besides, you're going to be working there once it's built. Seemed fitting to put your name on it." The applause was deafening this time. Sienna looked out at the crowd and saw her neighbors standing, clapping, some of them crying. She saw Mrs. Chen beaming like a proud grandmother. She saw Diana in the back, giving her a thumbs up. She saw Jerome and the other volunteers who'd transformed her apartment, all of them celebrating this moment like it was their victory too. Maya tugged on Sienna's sleeve. "Mama, they're going to put our name on a building." "I know, baby, I know." "Does that mean we're important?" "It means someone thinks we are." Hawk raised his hand for quiet. "Before we finish here, I want to introduce you to someone. Sienna, you met Cole yesterday, but I want to tell you who he really is." Cole stepped forward, looking uncomfortable with the attention. "Cole was the first family we helped after Lily died. His mother needed emergency surgery. Their insurance denied coverage. They were going to lose their house trying to pay for it. We covered the surgery, helped with the mortgage, got them stable. Cole was 16 at the time." Hawk put his hand on Cole's shoulder. "Now he's our operations manager. He coordinates every rescue we do. He finds the families, assesses the needs, makes sure help gets where it's going. He turned his gratitude into service." Cole nodded to Sienna. "You saved more than just Hawk that night. You saved the person who makes sure Lily's legacy keeps running. I owe you everything." "You don't owe me anything," Sienna said. "That's what Hawk said when he helped us. That's what everyone who's been helped says. But the owing isn't a debt. It's a responsibility. It's the responsibility to pass it forward, to help the next person, to make sure the chain of compassion doesn't break." Cole smiled. "You're part of that chain now. You saved Hawk. Hawk built something that saved me. I worked to save others, and now you'll do the same. That's how it works." Margaret stepped forward with one more item. A leather vest identical to the ones the bikers wore, except smaller, tailored for Sienna's frame. The patches were already sewn on, Lily's legacy across the back in bold letters, and on the front, a small patch that read Family Services Coordinator. "You don't have to wear it," Margaret said. "But you're family now. This makes it official." Sienna took the vest with trembling hands. The leather was soft, broken in, real. She slipped it on over her shirt, and it fit perfectly. "How did you know my size?" "Mrs. Chen," Margaret said with a grin. "She's been very helpful." The crowd cheered again. Someone started chanting, "Sienna! Sienna!" and others picked it up until her name echoed down the street. Maya was dancing, her giraffe tucked under one arm. Hawk was smiling despite the obvious exhaustion in his face. Cole and Margaret looked proud, like parents watching their child graduate. When the noise finally settled, Hawk took the microphone one last time. "I'm going back to the hospital now, because the doctors said if I didn't, they'd have me committed. But before I go, I want to say one more thing." He looked directly at Sienna. "You gave me my life back. I'm going to spend whatever time I have left making sure that gift ripples out to as many people as possible. Thank you for seeing a human being when everyone else saw a problem. Thank you for choosing compassion. Thank you for being exactly who you are." He stepped down from the stage, waving away the wheelchair again, and this time Sienna went to him. She hugged him carefully, aware of the fragility underneath his determined strength. "Thank you," she whispered, "for everything. Thank me by being great at this job. Thank me by helping families the way you helped me. Thank me by showing Maya that kindness matters." Hawk pulled back to look at her. "You're going to change lives now, Sienna. That's your job. Change lives." "I don't know if I can." "You already did. You changed mine. Everything after this is just practice." An ambulance pulled up at the end of the street, not emergency lights, just a quiet arrival. Two paramedics got out and walked toward Hawk with the resigned patience of people who'd been arguing with this particular patient for 24 hours. "Mr. Hawkins, we had a deal," one of them said. "You could come here for an hour, and then you go back to the cardiac unit." "I'm ready," Hawk said. He looked at Sienna one more time. "Monday morning, 9 a.m., downtown office. Cole will pick you up if you need a ride." "I'll be there." "Good. Now go spend the weekend with your daughter. Let yourself be happy. You've earned it." They loaded Hawk into the ambulance with the gentle efficiency of people who cared about their difficult patients. The ambulance pulled away without sirens, just a quiet departure back to hospital beds and monitoring equipment and the slow work of healing. The crowd began to disperse, neighbors returning to their apartments with new understanding, bikers heading to wherever they'd come from. But several people stopped to talk to Sienna first, Mr. Patterson apologizing profusely, Mrs. Williams offering to babysit Maya anytime Sienna needed, the Rodriguez family inviting her to dinner at their house the following weekend. "You're a celebrity now," Mrs. Chen said, appearing at Sienna's elbow as the last of the crowd filtered away. "How does it feel?" "Overwhelming, terrifying, wonderful. I don't know." Sienna watched Maya playing with a group of children who'd appeared from neighboring apartments, all of them examining Sophie the giraffe with appropriate wonder. "It doesn't feel real yet. Give it time. Reality has a way of settling in when you stop looking for it." Mrs. Chen patted her arm. "I'm proud of you. Your mother would be proud too." The mention of her mother made Sienna's eyes sting. "She would have told me I was crazy for helping a stranger." "No, she would have told you that you were brave. There's a difference." Mrs. Chen smiled. "She raised a good daughter. I'm glad you finally have people who see that." Cole approached as Mrs. Chen headed back inside. "Your car's ready. Want to come get it?" "Already?" Rodriguez worked through the night, said it was the least he could do. Cole jingled keys. "Come on, I'll drive you over." They collected Maya and rode together to the auto shop, Maya chattering the entire way about her new room and her books, and how she couldn't wait to tell her teacher about the building that would have her name on it. The shop was busy with Saturday customers, but Carlos Rodriguez met them at the entrance. "Miss Clark, welcome. Your car is ready." He led them to the service bay where Sienna's ancient Honda sat looking almost new. Fresh paint where rust had been, new tires that actually had tread, everything clean and functional. New transmission, new exhaust system, new battery, brake pads, full tune-up. She'll run smooth now. "How much do I owe you?" Sienna asked, even though she suspected she knew the answer. "Nothing. Lily's legacy covered everything." Carlos handed her the keys. "My daughter is alive because of them. This is how I say thank you." Sienna took the keys, feeling their weight. "Your daughter is okay now?" "She's cancer-free for 3 years. She's in 2nd grade, she plays soccer, she's everything I almost lost." Carlos's eyes were bright. "Hawk saved her when no one else would. So when he calls and asks me to fix a car, I fix the car. When he asks me to work all night, I work all night. It's not charity, it's family." They drove the Honda home, and Sienna marveled at how smoothly it ran, how the engine purred instead of coughed, how it felt like a real car instead of a machine barely holding together. Maya fell asleep in the back seat, exhausted from the excitement of the morning. The weekend passed in a blur of adjustment and wonder. Sienna cooked real meals from her fully stocked kitchen. Maya read every book Diana had brought, twice. They watched movies on the new television without the green tint. Sienna deposited Hawk's check and watched her bank account transform from double digits to numbers that meant stability. Sunday evening, after Maya was asleep, Sienna sat on her new couch and called the managers of her 2 jobs. She gave notice. Professional, grateful, apologetic for the short timeline. They understood. One of them told her she'd been the best employee they'd had in years, and to use him as a reference for anything she needed. Monday morning arrived too quickly and exactly on time. Sienna dressed in new clothes that Margaret had delivered on Sunday, professional but comfortable, the kind of outfit that said she belonged in an office without pretending to be someone she wasn't. She wore the leather vest over everything. Cole arrived at 8:30 to drive her downtown, even though she could have driven herself. "First day nerves," he explained. "Easier to have company." The Lily's Legacy office occupied the third floor of a building in downtown Oakland, with windows overlooking the lake and enough space for 20 workstations. Half of them were occupied, people on phones, working at computers, coordinating the kind of help Sienna would soon be providing. Margaret met them at the reception desk. "Ready?" "No," Sienna admitted. "But I'm here anyway." "That's the spirit. Come on, let me show you your office." She had an office. Not a cubicle, not a shared desk, but an actual office with a door and a window, and her name already on a placard outside. Sienna Clark, Family Services Coordinator. Inside, a desk held a computer, a phone, and a stack of intake folders waiting for review. "This is where you'll meet families," Margaret explained, "where you'll assess needs, coordinate services, follow up to make sure help is actually helping. We've got training scheduled for this whole week, systems, protocols, how to handle crisis calls. But the real training happens in the field, meeting people, learning to see what they're not saying. What if I mess up? Then you learn from it. Sienna, nobody here expects perfection. We expect effort and compassion. You've already proven you have both." Margaret smiled. "You're going to be great at this. Trust me." The week proved Margaret right. Sienna absorbed training like she was starving for it, learning database systems, memorizing protocols for emergency assistance, understanding the network of partners who provided services Lily's Legacy couldn't. By Friday, she took her first solo intake call. The woman's name was Patricia. She was 67, recently widowed, facing eviction because her late husband's medical bills had consumed their savings. She spoke in the careful, proud voice of someone who'd never asked for help before and hated doing it now. Sienna listened, really listened, not just to the facts, 3 months behind on rent, medications she couldn't afford, no family nearby, but to the shame underneath, the feeling of failure, the fear that accepting help meant admitting defeat. "Ms. Patricia," Sienna said gently, "can I tell you something?" "Of course, dear. 3 weeks ago, I was exactly where you are. I had $8 to my name, I was facing eviction, I was working 2 jobs and still couldn't make rent. I felt like I'd failed my daughter because I couldn't provide basic stability." Sienna's voice was steady, certain. "Asking for help doesn't mean you failed. It means you're human. It means you're smart enough to know you can't do everything alone. And it means you're brave enough to reach out when reaching out is the hardest thing in the world." Patricia was quiet for a long moment, then softly, "Thank you for understanding." "I do understand, and I'm here to help. Let me see what we can do." Sienna pulled up Patricia's file, cross-referenced it with available funds, coordinated with their housing assistance program. Within 30 minutes, she'd arranged for 3 months of rent to be paid directly to Patricia's landlord, set up medication delivery through their pharmacy partners, and scheduled a follow-up appointment to assess ongoing needs. "That's it?" Patricia asked, her voice trembling. "You can do all that?" "That's what we're here for. Someone helped me when I needed it most. Now I get to help you. That's how this works." When Sienna hung up the phone, she sat back in her chair and felt something settle into place. This was right. This was what she was supposed to be doing, not just surviving, but helping others survive. Not just receiving compassion, but extending it. 6 months later, Sienna stood in front of Clark House on its opening day. The building rose 3 stories, modern and welcoming, with large windows and accessible entrances and every accommodation they could think of to make families feel safe seeking help. Her name was carved into stone above the entrance, Clark House, a Lily's Legacy Community Center. Maya stood beside her, now 5 years old and starting kindergarten in a week. She wore a miniature version of Sienna's vest, a gift from the whole organization for her birthday last month. "It's really real," Maya said, staring up at the building with awe. "It's really real," Sienna agreed. Hawk appeared beside them, walking with his cane but healthy. 6 months of cardiac rehab and lifestyle changes had given him back his strength. "What do you think?" "I think I can't believe this is happening." "Believe it. You earned this." Hawk looked up at the building that bore Sienna's name. "In 6 months, you've helped 247 families. You've coordinated over $3 million in assistance. You've become the heart of this organization." He paused. "Lily would have liked you. She would have liked knowing someone like you was carrying her legacy forward. I hope I'm worthy of it." You are. Every single day you prove you are. The opening ceremony was simple: a ribbon cutting, a few speeches, a tour for the community members who'd gathered to see what had been built in their neighborhood. Mr. Patterson was there with his family, Michael running around with other kids who'd already claimed the playground in the back. Mrs. Williams brought her husband, who'd made a full recovery from his surgery and wanted to thank Sienna personally. Mrs. Chen stood in the front row, beaming with pride. When it was Sienna's turn to speak, she stood in front of the microphone and looked at the crowd: neighbors, families they'd helped, staff members who'd become friends, bikers who'd become family. 6 months ago, I made a choice, Sienna said. I chose to help a dying stranger instead of walking away. I spent my last $8 on aspirin and water. I kept a man alive until help could arrive. And in making that choice, I changed my life. I changed my daughter's life. I changed everything. She paused, gathering her thoughts. But here's what I've learned since then. I didn't change anything alone. Hawk built an organization dedicated to helping people. Cole coordinates the work. Margaret runs operations. Hundreds of volunteers give their time and skills. Thousands of donors contribute money. All of these people chose compassion. All of them decided that helping strangers matters. Sienna gestured to the building behind her. This center represents a simple truth. We're better when we help each other. We're stronger when we refuse to let our neighbors fall. We're more human when we see people's struggles and decide to do something about them. She looked at Maya, who was watching with solemn attention. My daughter is growing up in a world that often feels harsh and uncaring. But because of this organization, because of all of you, she's also growing up seeing what's possible when people choose kindness. She's seeing that compassion matters, that showing up for each other matters, that we don't have to accept poverty and suffering as inevitable. Sienna's voice strengthened. A week from now, this building will open its doors. Families will come here seeking help. Some will need food. Some will need medical assistance. Some will just need someone to listen, to understand, to care. And we're going to be here for all of them, not because they've earned it, not because they deserve it by some arbitrary measure, but because they're human, and humans deserve dignity. The crowd was silent, attentive. 6 months ago, I was the one who needed help. Today, I'm the one providing it. That transformation, from receiving to giving, that's the mission of this place. We don't just want to help people survive. We want to help them thrive. We want to help them become the helpers. Sienna smiled. That's what Hawk did for me. That's what I'm going to do for every family who walks through these doors. And I hope they'll do it for someone else. That's how we change the world. One act of compassion at a time, rippling outward until everyone is caught in the wave. The applause was immediate and sustained, but Sienna wasn't finished. There's one more thing, she said. This afternoon, I'd like to invite Mrs. Eleanor Chen to come up here. Mrs. Chen, where are you? Mrs. Chen looked startled, but she made her way to the front. Sienna guided her to the microphone. Mrs. Chen has been watching Maya for me for 2 years, Sienna said. She's charged me rates she could never afford to charge because she knew I couldn't pay more. She's given Maya cookies in secret. She's been patient with late payments. She's been family when we had no one else. Sienna pulled out an envelope. Lily's legacy is establishing a scholarship fund for working grandparents who provide childcare in their communities. Mrs. Chen, you're our first recipient. This covers the income you lost keeping your rates low for families who needed help. It's not charity, it's recognition that your work has value and you deserve to be compensated fairly. Mrs. Chen opened the envelope with shaking hands. Inside was a check for $10,000. She looked at Sienna with tears streaming down her face. I don't know what to say, Mrs. Chen whispered. Say you'll keep being exactly who you are. Say you'll keep helping families. Say you'll accept that you deserve help too. Sienna hugged her. Thank you for seeing us when we were invisible. Thank you for being there. The ceremony continued with tours and refreshments and children running through hallways that would soon be filled with hope. Sienna stood in the main office, her office, though she'd be sharing it with 3 other coordinators, and watched through the window as Maya played with other kids in the community room below. You did good, Cole said, appearing beside her. Really good. We did good. All of us. Yeah, but you started it. That choice at the gas station, that was all you. Sienna thought about that night, about 8 crumpled dollars and a man turning gray on the pavement, about the choice to run towards suffering instead of away from it, about how one small act of kindness had created this ripple that just kept spreading. I wasn't trying to start anything, Sienna said. I was just trying to help. That's exactly why it worked. You didn't help because you wanted something back. You helped because you saw a human being who needed help. That's pure. That's what this whole organization is built on. Cole smiled. And now you get to do it every day. How does that feel? Like I finally understand what I'm supposed to be doing with my life. A week later, Clark House officially opened. The first family through the door was a young mother with 2 kids, facing eviction because her hours had been cut at work. Sienna sat across from her in the intake office, listening to a story that could have been her own just months ago. We're going to help you, Sienna said, already pulling up resources on her computer. Rent assistance, job training, childcare support, we've got all of it. You're not going to lose your home. The woman started crying. I don't understand. Why would you help me? You don't even know me. Because someone helped me when I needed it most. Because your kids deserve stability. Because you're working hard and the system is failing you, and that's not your fault. Sienna reached across the desk and took the woman's hand. Because you asked for help, and asking for help is one of the bravest things anyone can do. 2 hours later, the woman left with rent paid for 3 months, a job interview scheduled with one of their employment partners, and her kids enrolled in the on-site childcare program. Sienna watched her leave and felt the same sense of rightness she'd felt helping Patricia 6 months ago. This was what Hawk had meant about changing lives. This was what carrying forward Lily's legacy looked like. This was compassion in action, rippling outward, creating waves that would reach farther than Sienna could imagine. That evening, Sienna picked up Maya from the after-school program at Clark House, free for employees and community members, and they drove home in the car that ran perfectly. They climbed the stairs to their apartment, passing neighbors who smiled and waved and knew their names. They ate dinner in the kitchen that was always stocked because Sienna's salary meant groceries were no longer a luxury. After Maya went to bed, in her purple room with the bookshelf and the stuffed animals, Sienna sat on her couch and thought about how far they'd come. 6 months ago, she'd had $8 and desperation. Now she had stability, purpose, and the knowledge that she was making a difference. Her phone buzzed. A text from Hawk. How was your first official day at Clark House? Sienna typed back, perfect. We helped 5 families. It felt amazing. Good. That's just the beginning. Wait until you see what happens when you really get rolling. Thank you for believing in me. Thank you for saving my life. Everything good that happens from here forward, that's on you. You made this possible. Sienna set down her phone and looked around her apartment, the furniture that had appeared like magic, the stability that Lily's legacy had provided, the job that gave her purpose beyond survival. All of it traced back to one choice, one moment, one decision to help a stranger. She thought about Lily, the little girl she'd never met who'd loved butterflies and princess costumes. She thought about how Lily's death had created something beautiful, how Hawk had transformed his grief into healing for thousands of people. She thought about the chain of compassion that connected them all, Hawk to Cole, to Sienna, to Patricia, to the young mother today, to whoever those people would help tomorrow. That was the legacy. Not buildings or money or recognition, but the understanding that kindness mattered, that showing up for each other mattered, that one person choosing compassion could change everything. Maya appeared in the living room, clutching Sophie the giraffe, her eyes sleepy. Can't sleep, baby? I was thinking about something, Maya said, climbing onto the couch beside Sienna. You saved Mr. Hawk's life, and then he saved ours. Does that mean we have to save someone else's life too? Sienna pulled her daughter close. Yes, that's exactly what it means. That's what we do now. We help people. That's our job. I like that job. Me too, Sweet Pea. Me too. They sat together on the couch, Sienna and her daughter, in their warm apartment in a neighborhood that had learned to see them. Outside, Oakland hummed with evening traffic and city sounds. Somewhere in the darkness, people were struggling. Somewhere, families were facing impossible choices. Somewhere, someone was wondering if anyone would help. And tomorrow, Sienna would wake up and go to Clark House and answer that question with the same certainty she'd shown at a gas station 6 months ago. Yes, someone will help. We will help. Because that's what we do. Because compassion matters. Because one person choosing kindness can change everything. The story that had started with $8 and a dying stranger had become something bigger than Sienna ever imagined. It had become a mission, a purpose, a legacy. It had become her life's work. And it was only just beginning.